Hi, this is Shelley Kraft, and welcome to SNN Live. We're at the 2011 Silver Summit in lovely downtown Spokane, Washington, at the Davenport Hotel. I have Jeff Berwick, the Dollar Vigilante, who is a featured speaker. He writes the Dollar Vigilante newsletter. He's a raconteur. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Jeff Berwick. Jeff, welcome back to SNN Live.
Thank you, Shelley. Always a pleasure.
So who do you love and who do you hate?
Who do I love and who I hate? Well, I hate the government, and I love free market people and things like gold and silver. That's basically all I care about is freedom. I'm mostly focused on freedom. That's really why I'm in the business I'm in, is that I really want to spread freedom. It's very lost art, freedom. A lot of people have forgotten what it even is, thanks to years of government public education and things like that. And so that's why I come to a lot of these shows where they have precious metals, because silver and gold are free market money. And so I'm a big supporter. This is my first time at the Silver Summit, and it's been great. I've really been enjoying it.
So you're a First Amendment guy.
I don't even pay attention to the amendments, really. If they had to amend...
It's freedom of speech, okay? There you go.
Okay, yeah, so I guess you could say I'm a First Amendment guy. But I don't think I need an amendment to do free speech.
And you don't need a tagline like that either. I got it. So you're at a conference. What's happened in the last quarter? You know where I'm going with this, probably Occupy Wall Street. I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound, too far from the right, but I don't know what they're doing there. And if anything, they should be occupying Pennsylvania Avenue, if you ask me.
Yes, that's exactly what I've written, exactly the same. I agree completely. The one thing that we can...
And this is over then.
Yeah, we can just end this now. But the one thing that you can be, that I think we can all agree on, is a lot of those people are very angry. I think that's for sure. Yeah. Now, what they're angry at and what they believe is the problem, that's an entire different story. You get a different story from every single person. But it is actually kind of nice to see that Americans are waking up and getting angry about what's going on. They don't know exactly why and what has happened, but at least they've started to wake up. I've been talking to you for about a year now, and I remember talking about things like protests and riots happening in the U.S., and a lot of people said, well, I don't know if that's going to happen. Well, we're finally starting to see it. We've had riots and protests and that sort of thing all over the world for the last few years, ever since 2008, and finally the Americans are finally joining in. So I'm excited by that. But it is kind of scary. There's a very communist slant to many of these people. They're blaming greed in Wall Street, which is only a symptom of the problem. The problem is the government and their fiat currency system and the Federal Reserve. They should be at the Federal Reserve. They should all be in Washington. All of the criminals are in Washington. The Wall Street guys are a symptom of the problem. They will always exist in a fiat currency system based on debt. That is basically corrupt at its core. So of course they're going to be corrupt, and they're going to basically steal from people through things like inflation and do all the things that Wall Street bankers do. But they are just a symptom of the problem, and you really need to get to the source. So when you see a lot of these people say, we need more government involvement to get a hold of these Wall Street people, that's the exact wrong thing, and it's the exact opposite of what they should be doing. The problem is in Washington, and hopefully, and I'm seeing it every day, thanks to things like the internet, people are learning a little bit, and there is a lot of people, you see a lot of end the Fed signs, which is really good. That's so important for the future of the U.S. and the world, to get rid of that central bank. It's impoverished and killed so many people around the world through wars.
I think that Occupy Wall Street has a greed overtone, but I think it's really jobs. People want to work. I mean, they can't get jobs. They've gone to 4 years of college, some more. They've got loans looking them. I mean, they can't afford to buy gas and take their girl out on Saturday night. But meanwhile, they voted for Obama.
Yeah, and what's really scary is Obama says he now supports this movement, which I never want to be on the same side as Obama on anything. So if he's supporting them, it makes it very hard for me to support them. But it's really a case of education, and not the kind of education that all those kids did with their thousands and thousands of dollars worth of student debt. That's not really even education. It's more like indoctrination. And you're correct. So many of these young people are basically indentured slaves at this point, because you can't actually get rid of the student loan debt. It's the only debt that you can't relinquish in bankruptcy. So many of these people have $50,000, $100,000 worth of debt. They have a useless piece of paper, and a lot of them have a Bachelor of Arts degree and these sort of things.
And they were promised jobs.
Yes, of course. And of course there is no jobs, because this entire system has been collapsing now for years. And really what I think, and it's fairly scary thought, is a lot of these students, because they can't relinquish this debt and they'll probably never be able to pay it back. I believe that the U.S. government at some point might try to make them go into the army to repay their debts. So we might have these students, it sounds crazy, I know, but we might have these students who went to get their Bachelor of Arts, and they're going to be shipped overseas to some desert, to some other war that Obama, the Prince of Peace, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, started.
Wait, hold on a second. But he owns the printing press. The government could just print more money. Vigilante, what are you talking about? This is they'll just print another couple of trillion.
Yes, well, that's what they're doing right now. They're printing trillions. But one of the things that the U.S. government has been doing is basically enslaving their own people. And so the U.S. government does not have it in its interest at all to help these people. So they don't want to pay off these student debts. That's why they've gotten them so indebted. They want to keep them trapped, enslaved, really. Americans at this point in time are some of the most enslaved people in history, but they don't even know it. Thanks to propaganda and public education, they think they're the freest country on earth, and sadly is not the case, as I'm sure you know.
You've got a lot of followers. Your popularity has grown almost exponentially. Why are so many more people flocking to your website, flocking when your room today where you gave your speech, the place was full? Why is that happening?
Well, in a time when the government...
You're just such a good-looking guy, right?
In a time when the government is completely deceitful, it's quite dangerous actually to speak the truth. But I actually speak the truth, and if people are at least open, have an open mind and try to learn what's going on, when they hear what I'm talking about, it sets off a lot of light bulbs in people's minds. They don't realize, for example, when I first learned about freedom and that sort of thing, Doug Casey basically got me into it. And the first article I read from Doug Casey, I remember thinking, oh, I didn't know you could think that way. I didn't know it was allowed. And that's what can happen when you get these ideas. Ideas are the most powerful thing in the world. And freedom ideas are very powerful. So as when people hear what I'm talking about, and they see, everyone I believe sees generally that there's problems. They might not admit it, they might not be able to deal with it, but I don't think there's hardly anyone who thinks everything's going okay. If you look at polls of what people think about the future, or how confident they are, or how good a job the U.S. government's doing, it's a very small amount of people are actually optimistic. So they're actually seeing what's going on. And so luckily and thankfully, a lot of them start looking for information, and then when they hear some of the things that I talk about, I'm sure it shocks some people, but at the same time it probably excites some people, because they realize there's more out there than what they've been told. And a lot of the stuff is, as pessimistic as it sounds, is actually quite optimistic. If we can get rid of this system we have right now, this governmental system, the central banks, we'll have prosperity and peace on earth like we've never had in the past. So although people call me a pessimist, I'm actually incredibly optimistic for the human race. The human race is the longest bull market in history. Thousands of years we've been rising up. And you look at today, look at all the things we have. If you look at 100 years ago, we basically just lived on farms and didn't really have much. And it's just amazing what's happened in those 100 years under really terrible systems. If we can get rid of those systems and really unleash the potential of humanity, within years or decades, we'll be exploring space and doing amazing things, and there'll be no wars, there'll be very little poverty. There's just amazing potential we have here. So it's quite exciting at the same time, but it's also scary, because we have to get through the collapse before we can get to the brighter future.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Dollar Vigilante. Let me tell you, he has his own opinions, and go to his website. What is that?
DollarVigilante.com. If you went to a U.S. public school, you probably can't spell that, so that's DollarVigilante.com.
And because there is the First Amendment, he could say all these things. Let's not forget that. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Berwick, the Dollar Vigilante. Again, thanks for coming on to SNN Live.
Always my pleasure.
My pleasure.